Hey friends, this is Tiina and welcome to my new video. This video is a shorter one. I was just pretty fast with my paintings this time, but here we are creating my February weekly spreads. My theme for February is pastel skies and clouds, and if you haven't seen my February plan with me video yet, I will link it in the cards and in the description down below so you can check it out. This was probably my fastest weekly spread planning session ever. I think I spent less than 4 hours painting these in total, which worked for me perfectly. I have sometimes struggled with having to spend like extra 10 hours just painting my weeklies, and that's just not always the ideal situation. But for my first weekly spread, I used a layout that was inspired by Hannah Maria plants. It has this huge painting on the left side and a very minimalistic layout besides that. I will link Hannah's Instagram account down below so you can check it out. I first started by taping the edge of the painting and mixing the colors I used for the sky part of the painting, since that's what I painted at first. I chose a very different color scheme to this spread than what I used in my other ones, but I have to say this painting became my absolute favorite, and for some reason I just really love it. I noticed how I struggled with the cold tones of this theme a bit, so this cute warm yellow and orange sky was just what I needed. I started by adding this more orangey yellow in the upper part of the sky and then added this pastel yellow color to the bottom. I think the lighter yellow color I chose ended up looking a little bit dirty in tone, so I ended up just mixing this much brighter yellow color instead after the first color below it dried. I think this definitely saved the painting and made it more vibrant and eye-catching. I tried to mix the colors together a bit with dragging the brighter yellow colors to the orange, and even though I thought it looked streaky at first, it dried nice and even, which I'm always happy about. Now that the background was ready, I moved to the clouds below. I took the same orange tone I used for the sky but mixed a bit of black in to use as the shadow color for my clouds. For the lighter upper part, I mixed just a tiny bit of yellow to a zinc white color to create this super light yellow color. And this is what I did with all of my paintings, obviously changing the color I mixed to the white depending on the color of the sky in that particular painting. I added the white to the upper part of the cloud first and then added the darker shadow to the bottom and then mixed the colors together with a bit of water. If the shadow looked a bit too harsh or dark, I took a bit more white and covered it up more. If you want that soft look, I would definitely go with a lighter shadow so it doesn't accidentally turn out super dramatic with dark shadows. I used a very light color after accidentally mixing in too much black in some of my previous paintings. It was seriously so therapeutic to paint these clouds. It was easy because I was just repeating the same steps over and over again, not having to actually think too much or work on any small details. I know this might be a bit repetitive for you, but I loved working on these fluffy clouds and I hope it could be at least a little bit relaxing for you to watch, as it really was super relaxing for me to work on them. By the way, as you can see in my clouds, you can really see the dots on the page through the paint. I personally don't care about it, but if you don't like that look, definitely just go in with thicker coats of paint. I used a lot of water and not that much paint at all, so that's why you can see them so easily. I think the shadow on the clouds on the left side had more of an orangey brown tone, so I took some yellow to those spots to create even more warmer shade that would match the right side a bit better. I also just added some more pure white gouache to the top of the clouds. I don't know why, but I forgot to film the process of me creating the crescent moon and stars, but for the moon I just used this circle template and painted it with gouache, and for the stars I just used my detail brush and sprinkled the white gouache all over the background. Then I started making the actual dailies on my right page. I just drew these pink circles where I wrote the dates on top. I don't know what happened in my mind that I added the next dot here, but I just covered it up with a small piece of white paper. Sometimes these really weird mistakes just happen and it makes you feel really confused, but hey, what's the spread without any mistakes? Lastly, I just wrote the days of the week on the left side of the dots with my Muji Gel Pen, and then it was the time to set up my next spread. I truly love this first weekly I made, and honestly I'm sad I didn't use this color combo more. But the next spread I was working on was inspired by Bloom and Dot, who is a super talented artist and a good friend of mine. I've now included this weekly spread layout in my themes for 3 months in a row, but I just love it so much and it's super fast to make as well. I hope you're not getting tired of it. Even though I love this layout, I noticed how I really couldn't make it work with this blue color palette. I've always used craft paper with it and had a warmer color scheme, but I just didn't really know what to do with it this time. I love how this painting turned out, but I'm not super happy with the spread, but at least I know now that it works better with a more neutral color palette. I made these simple boxes for each day of the week and painted my cloud picture on the left side. I used the same black lettering as in my initial setup, and as you might know, it's inspired by Therese T's January setup. I swear not everything I make is inspired by other creators, but this time there's a lot of those things involved. I've noticed how it's sometimes hard for me to come up with new lettering styles, and that's why I often use the same fonts and styles of writing. I'm also way more interested in experimenting with my layouts and art styles than lettering. I've had it happen for me too many times that I've loved a painting and I've completely ruined the piece with my header, so it's better to sometimes stay with the familiar ones. I started working on the painting, making the background layer by layer, going from the darkest color in the bottom slowly to the lightest on top. This was a fun style to try out, especially since the working area was so small and easy to work with. It didn't really matter when it didn't turn out perfectly even and blended. If this was done on a bigger surface, you should definitely add even less white gouache to each layer to keep the color change very minimal, since now you can clearly see how there's a big difference between the colors, but I kinda like that look though. After the background was done, I obviously created the clouds next. I again mixed a tiny bit of blue to a white gouache and added it to the top of the cloud, and then mixed the darker color for the bottom. I like this more dramatic composition of the clouds in this painting. I noticed how I always added them only to the bottom part of the image, but I wanted to do something different here now, especially that my painting was so small and I knew it wouldn't take long. I added some more white gouache to the top of the cloud since the light blue color looked a bit green again. I also think the white gouache looked so much better with the blue background. By the way, all of my used products and gouache shades are listed in the description of this video. I used Royal Talens Gouache, some Sakura Pigma Microns, Archer and Olive acrylograph marker, and their notebook. I just used some random brushes, so I won't be linking those, but I mainly used a bigger round flat brush for the background and a smaller round brush for the clouds. Lastly, I used my detail brush to make some small dots to the sky as stars. I really love how this painting turned out, even though the whole spread isn't my favorite. I experimented a bit off camera and ended up adding these small blue dots to the right side of the spread and these random blue lines to the boxes. But my last spread is a Dutch door spread, and if you have watched my videos before, you know how much I love Dutch door weeklies. And I mostly prefer them for the look. I don't think they usually give me much in terms of practicality, but they are super fun to make as well. So I started this off by cutting the spread, and for that I needed to make these circles for my dailies first. I just did them on the right side of the spread because I always love cutting my Dutch doors with these circles popping out from the page. I'm having a hard time actually explaining what I'm doing, but I hope just seeing the process helps. I made the Dutch door horizontal and I cut the page really close to the center. If you do this, make sure not to cut the ribbons if those are visible in either of your spreads. It's pretty easy to just cut them if you're not careful, so just keep that in mind. I wanted to do something a bit different too, so I ended up cutting the bottom of the page as well. I also rounded the edges of the Dutch door with my corner rounding tool. I just think it looks nicer with the rounded corners of the page. Then I taped the edges of my horizontal painting, and I also taped the other side of the page now that I'm painting the edge of the paper. Luckily this time I didn't get paint all over my other spreads too, unlike in my initial setup where I have random paint spots everywhere. I decided to make a pink painting this time. It was nice to paint with all different colors so the paintings would stay unique and different and not so repetitive, even though the techniques are very similar. I decided not to make a gradient, so I just tried to cover the whole area of the sky with my paint and a really tiny paintbrush for some reason. It became extremely streaky, so I took my flat brush and started coating it more evenly with also a lighter pastel pink. I think this was a better color for the sky, and I also painted the bottom of the page I cut out with the same color. Then I proceeded to paint the clouds itself. I wanted to again add more clouds in the right side of the painting so it wouldn't look so flat. I don't think I need to explain to you what I'm doing here since I've said it multiple times by now, and I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory as well. I will start working on my March theme soon already. I think March is becoming one of those months where I will always have a similar-ish theme since I immediately went to my last year's flower field theme when I was thinking about what I wanted to do. I'm not a huge fan of spring, mostly because in Finland it usually consists of rain, grey and gloomy weather and slush on the roads, so having a flower theme in March always sounds like such a nice contrast to that. If you have any theme recommendations for me, leave them down below. I would love to know if there are some specific themes you would like to see from me. I have a couple of themes in mind that I would love to make this year, but I also sometimes feel like my brain is completely empty and I have no ideas. Sometimes it also feels like I have done every single theme there is in this world, but that's not the case. I painted some small stars in the background and a bigger moon in the left side, and with that my painting was done. I'm sorry I didn't really talk about the process that well, but I hope you still enjoyed watching me paint these paintings and creating the weeklies. I'm excited to use them, especially the first one. I loved that one. Then I just peeled the tapes off and started making the weekly layout itself. I took my dusty rose colored acrylograph and drew the rest of the circles for the dailies. I made sure to sketch the circles first below the Dutch door on both sides so I wouldn't accidentally have them peeking from underneath the Dutch door and they would actually go below the circles in both sides. I have a little note section in the right side where I wrote headers with the same black letters. I wrote the dates on top of the dots and wrote the days of the week below them in this rounded shape. Then I made the boxes for each day with my 03 Pigma Micron. I made a little line to separate my tasks and events from my journal entries, and that's it for my February weekly spreads. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video, even though it was a bit shorter this time. We are just quickly going to flip through all the spreads I made here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, leave a thumbs up and tell me which spread was your favorite if you watched until the end. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!